How's it going, everyone? Your boy Corey here, aka Crasher, back with a new video, and ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about YouTube here, and to be more specific, we are going to be talking about the CEO of YouTube, Susan Wojcicki. We ourselves an article that is titled, YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki advocates for governments to pass laws restricting speech so YouTube can enforce them. As if YouTube wasn't already censorship enough with the way that it is ran, oh my god. This is going to be one hell of a bumpy ride, so strap yourselves in, folks. In a recent interview, YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki advocated for governments to pass new laws restricting speech so that she and YouTube can enforce them. Alright, we are barely into this article, and already there is absolutely no faith that anything good will come from it. I mean, YouTube is already heavy on the censorship as is, and the fact that YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki is advocating for even more laws to be passed that restrict free speech. This is absolute insanity, and keep in mind, Susan Wojcicki is also the same individual that gave herself the Free Expression Award. Try to wrap your head around that crazy amount of mental gymnastics. Wojcicki's anti-free speech stance came during an appearance on Thai TV Hamburg's YouTube channel as part of their A Distinguished Conversation series, which is moderated by Dr. Matthias C. Kettmann. Wojcicki was joined by Dr. Wolfgang Schulz, the director of Leibniz Institute for Media Research. During the discussion, Wojcicki revealed that YouTube rolled out an entirely 100% machine-automated content moderation system. She stated, within a couple of weeks, we actually built a system to move 100% to machines because we knew the pandemic was coming. We knew that we were going to have to lose our workers, and in a couple of weeks, we built this 100% automated system to manage content moderation. And let's see, how's all that going for the site when it comes to the 100% full usage of the automated system to manage content moderation? Well, aside from the needless censorship, as well as demonetization and even the false deletion of content and channels, I'd have to say it's going pretty damn well, right? I'm totally not being sarcastic. Like, it's just absolute lunacy at this point how out of touch YouTube is when it comes to this big divide between them and the community. And I have said this time and time again, the YouTube community is not shy of calling on YouTube and saying what is an issue, but it seems like that YouTube turns the other way and either ignores the issue, or they come out with a quote-unquote solution for something else that none of us even asked for. From there, Wojcicki described how their content moderation system previously worked before they switched to 100% automation. We use our machines basically to go out and cast a new identity, I think they mean identify, what is content that could be problematic. And then we use the human reviewers to say, yes, it is problematic, or no, it's not. There's adult content, for example, that's very easy to identify with machines, but sometimes hate and harassment has a lot more nuance and context and could be mixed with political speech. And that's where we would want to have humans spend more time understanding the context to make the right decisions, she added. Considering the amount of money that YouTube has made off of not only our content, but also when it comes to commercial interests and advertisers in general, you would think that maybe YouTube could maybe pull back the reliance on 100% automation and maybe focus a little bit more on hiring more staff, so that way when a problem does arise, we can have ourselves human help a lot quicker and hopefully more efficiently. She then described how their 100% automated system works. Basically, we built the system that worked entirely with machines, and we used the small set of full-time employees to handle the appeals. When people said, no, you made a mistake, can you check? So we used our full-time employees for that. She went on to admit this strategy did not work out as well as they had planned, as they made mistakes and possibly crushed numerous small businesses. With those mistakes being made, Wojcicki says they've gone back to using a combination of machines and people. Alright, I'll give Susan a touch of credit here, as she admitted that the strategy did not work out as they had planned. Obviously, we knew it wasn't going to work. But when it's mentioned here, the possibility of crushing numerous small businesses, that has been something that has been happening for years. Not just in this one singular period of time. It has been happening for years. 2016 was literally the last golden year for YouTube, and by the time 2017 rolled around, that is where everything went downhill, from mass demonetization to channels literally being destroyed, to the point where YouTubers actually quit YouTube because of how badly their channels were being damaged, demonetized, not promoted, shadow banned, etc., etc. And I myself can speak from firsthand experience. I'm not going to really get into the nitty-gritty, but for the OGs that are subbed here, you might remember the name Mega Crasher. Well, that was a channel that I had spent 4 years on, from late 2015 to around mid-2019. And throughout the years, more specifically around 2017, 2018, were very troublesome, and a lot of it had to do with YouTube and their constant screw-ups. After briefly detailing how their content moderation system works, Ketman asked her, "You've mentioned the important position that YouTube has in how to deal with content, whether to downrank it, to demonetize it, depending on the jurisdiction you're in. In some countries, like Germany, courts have taken a rather strong position on the limits of what platforms can do, whether they must not act arbitrarily, or that they have to stick to their standards and implement them." He added, "So how does that work in practice? Perhaps you can elaborate a bit on that. How do you make sure that in light of the many different jurisdictions, you have to navigate this minefield between national jurisdictions, between keeping advertisers happy, between keeping users interested?" In response, Wojcicki stated, "First of all, I'll say that we work around the globe, and you're right. Certainly there are many different laws and many different jurisdictions, and we enforce the laws of the various jurisdictions around speech, or what's considered safe or not safe. That's true for democratically elected governments. It might get a little bit more complicated in non-democratically governments. So basically, we enforce those laws." That actually hasn't been the controversial part. What has been the controversial part has been where there is content that would be deemed as harmful, but yet is not illegal. An example of that, for example, would be COVID. I'm not aware of there being laws by government around COVID in terms of not being able to debate the efficacy of masks, or where the virus came from, or the right treatment or proposal, she stated. But yet there was a lot of pressure and concern about us distributing misinformation that went against what was considered the standard and accepted medical knowledge. So this category of harmful but illegal has been, I think, where most of the discussion has been, Wojcicki added. For us, we look at that content and we think about the role that we play in society. We want to be doing the right thing for our users and for our creators, Wojcicki said. We also generate revenue from advertisers, and if we are serving content that is seen by our advertising community as not benefiting society, no advertiser is going to want to appear on that, and they're certainly not going to even want to appear on a different, content that is positive if they think the platform as a whole is not being responsible. Wojcicki continued, "So we are generally very aligned. Responsibility is good for our business, and we have over 2 million creators on our platform that we share revenue with. So if we aren't generating revenue for them, then that's a problem for our creators. They create beautiful and incredible content, and we share the majority of revenue with them." Okay, we went through a fair portion of this article without having to stop and respond, but this right here, what we had just read, Oh my god, there is so much I could say about this. First of all, you say, and I quote, "We want to be doing the right thing for our users and for our creators." That right there is a load of bullshit. If you really were true to that statement, then we would not be having even half of the amount of problems that the site has had over the course of many years, and you wouldn't have your community literally screaming their heads off at you 100 times a week, bringing up the same issues that has been plaguing the site for years. I would also like to know what your definition is of positive content. Is it really positive content, i.e. wholesome content, i.e. upbeat content, really energy-packed type of content, or are we talking about positive content in the context that more or less fits your narratives? I mean, I like how you try to word things as carefully as possible, but an experienced vet like myself can see right through a lot of what you're saying. I mean, I'm not stupid, and a lot of your creators that bust their ass for the site are not stupid either. Next, she stated, "I think governments can always. Our recommendation, if governments want to have more control of online speech, is to pass laws to have that be very cleanly and clearly defined such that we can implement it. There are times that we see the laws being implemented or being suggested that they're not necessarily clean or possible for us to cleanly interpret them. And we've also seen sometimes that there's laws passed just for the internet as opposed to for all speech," Wojcicki detailed. "I do think that's a dangerous area when we start to get in and say, oh, sure, you could say something like this in a magazine or on TV, but you can't say it on the internet," she concluded. And ladies and gentlemen, we get to my absolute favorite part out of this whole situation. She is advocating for laws to step it up when it comes to the control and containment of free speech online. As if we already didn't have enough to deal with when it came to YouTube and their heavy usage of censorship of content that doesn't appeal to their political narratives. And not just political narratives, there are a lot of other narratives. For example, branded narratives. I mean, unless you are a branded individual, or let's just say an individual that they have preferential treatment for, well, let's just say that you're pretty damn lucky if you don't get the receiving end of censorship, especially if you are a somewhat of a large YouTuber that is very against what YouTube is for. I mean, Susan, you were awarded with the Free Expression Award, were you not? I mean, typically in that context, that would mean that you would advocate for free expression, but when it comes to the actual functionality of YouTube, well, it's the complete opposite. So, yeah, I mean, again, more mental gymnastics to try and wrap your head around there. It's also funny how Susan here is demanding for there to be laws that are clearly defined when she turns around and implements the guidelines that are very vague, and purposely vague, mind you, because if you were to do something that is questionable but doesn't outright violate any of the community guidelines, well, then YouTube can simply turn around and remove said content and then try to add on to the vagueness by saying, oh, but you violated this, this, and this, even though it wasn't clearly defined in the community guidelines to begin with. It also kind of comes off as dog whistling, because this is essentially her saying, hey, hurry up and get these laws passed down so we can shut down legally content that we don't agree with. So right now, as an example, you can make a video that is completely by the books, but doesn't align with YouTube's beliefs. But if these laws were to be passed down, then that means that YouTube would be able to technically, legally remove your video, even though you were not in the wrong beforehand. What do you make of Wojcicki's recommendations to governments to pass laws to more heavily restrict speech in order for YouTube to implement them? So what do I make of Wojcicki's recommendations, right? Well, I think honestly, she needs to step down as CEO. I am normally against deplatforming and depersoning people, but considering the amount of lives she has ruined with her negligence, this is something that I think is needing to happen for the betterment and the future of YouTube. She needs to step down as CEO and be replaced by someone that's actually more in touch with the YouTube community, and maybe we can go back to where there were the golden times of YouTube, where we could actually broadcast ourselves. So I think this is something that definitely needs to be shared out, and not just shared out, but responded to. If you guys have watched up to this point of the video, and you yourselves are YouTubers, if you have the ability and the software to make YouTube videos, then I would strongly suggest that you make a response video to what we had responded to, and get the news out there, get the information out there, and we definitely need to take a stand once and for all against Susan Wojcicki, because this just comes off as tyranny here. Like, how much more censorship do we need on the platform? I mean, my god, it's like, what's next? We can't say the word blue and we get censored. We can't breathe, we get censored. We can't eat, we get censored. I mean, what's next, honestly? Like, it's honestly boggling at the mind. But anyways, these are just my own takeaways from this. What are your guys' thoughts and opinions about what it is we talked about here in this video? Whether you agree or disagree with them, ladies and gentlemen, I always like to hear you guys out. Just remember to keep it 100% respectful and 100% civil, and I would love to chat with you guys. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you for your time as well in viewing this video. Have yourself a damn good one, and I'll see you in the next video.